Alrighty, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. As promised, a little bit delayed, but here we are. Week number 5 recap. Crazy that we already have 5 weeks in the books. So, again, same teams mostly in action. Justice Homestead, number 2. Next week, we are headed down to Florida for the first Mayhem Homestead. So, should be a lot of fun down there. Got a set of 6 matches just like this weekend, and we'll be moving on. The next big map, or the next big week where there will actually be teams in action that haven't been, looks to be week number 9, I believe, which is, yes, the Shock Fest, which will be their first homestead of the year. Got teams like Vancouver, Dallas, both of the LA teams, and San Francisco, of course, back in action. Hopefully that still happens. Some people a little bit worried that, actually, it says week 8. So that'll be week 8, I suppose. Weird. Hopefully that happens. There isn't any coronavirus stuff that will interfere with it at all. And we get to see, in a couple of weeks, we get to see new teams. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about week number 5. Got some I thought, very good takeaways from this week. It was a bit of an eye-opening week, you could say. At the end of the week, they also did the new hero pull. They banned Winston. Been unfortunate there. They banned Lucio as a support, which I think will be very interesting to see what that does, if it does anything to the compositions that were strong. And then for the DPS, they got rid of Soldier. Feels bad. F's in the chat. And they got rid of Sombra. Totally fine with that. Best case scenario, of course, would have been getting rid of Sombra and May, but May will still be playable next week. But here we go. Quickly to recap the scores. Florida scored there were a couple of upsets early on. For my predictions, I got the first 2 wrong and then the last 4 right. Florida took down Toronto. Toronto looked completely out of sorts. Houston pretty much dominated Paris to get their second straight win. Justice, after losing the first map, came back and took down Boston 3-1. No huge surprise there. Paris destroyed Philly the first half. Philly came back, tied it up, but Philly, in a super, super close map 5, pulled it out and handed Philly their first loss of the season. And then New York taking down Washington 3-1. Not a big surprise there. And then in maybe the quickest match of the week, it was either that one or the Houston Paris one. Atlanta took down Boston with ease. So, 2 big losers for the week. For me, it's got to be Defiant and Boston. So, the big thing with hero pools, they've talked about this on the show. I think pretty much everyone can agree on this. It's massive for the coaching staff, even more so than the players. Yes, it's a thing for player versatility, and who you can rotate in, and if you can have success week to week, even with different little mini metas. However, you won't have to worry about that if your coaching staff was good, if your organization was good, and brought in the right players. If you brought in players who can only play under a couple of different circumstances, then your team is going to struggle some weeks. But if you have the members that can cross over roles, this is particularly important for DPS. The support and tank, obviously there aren't as many heroes in those categories, and I think a lot of the players know how to play multiple supports, because of how the metas have shifted and because there's just less to do, and it takes a little bit of time, less time to master them than, say, DPS. There's the DPSs who hone their tracer skills and kind of tracer only for 2 years, so they might not have as diverse a hero pool as someone who played through a Lucio meta, a Brig meta, a Mercy meta, etc., etc. Zen, other guys that have played a bunch of Zen, a bunch of Ana, get the Batiste in there as well. So it's very important to have a deep roster of DPS players who can fill in and perform week to week, even if they didn't play last week. But now there's two heroes in the meta that are super good in their pool, so then they can jump in. So that's going to be a super important thing. Um, and yeah, early returns were very bad for Toronto. I did go back yesterday and a little bit earlier today. I went through all of the matches. So for the Toronto one, it was more of a. I didn't think the players got outplayed as much as they got out schemed. Their comps were pretty terrible. Florida just kind of said, "Here's Orisa. Your Winston can't do anything," and Toronto just kept throwing in Beast and chucking them at the Orisa, and it did not work at all. So I think that was more the issue with Toronto. Also, they used a ton of the Sombra. I personally don't think Sombra's that good. Um, in a lot of the matchups where it was like a Tracer Sombra versus a say like a Tracer Soldier, or like a Mei. We saw some Mei Tracers and Mei Hanzo. It didn't go well for the Sombra. In pro play, it's so difficult to coordinate Sombra, and that's why she's not super useful on the ladder. She needs a ton of coordination. As you guys know, if you play the ladder, not great coordination game to game, unless you have a six stack and you guys actually communicate well. But teams are so good at looking for Sombras now, denying Sombras. Zens are extremely good at either hiding or hitting the trance before the EMP can go off with the delay to the EMP activation in effect from probably a couple months ago at this point. It makes it way easier for the teams to battle around it. And the other thing with Sombra is you take a couple of minutes. You can't generate your ult very fast because, like I said, the other teams are so good at playing around it that you take 2 minutes, and then all your DPS player has to do is fuck up one Q press. He catches like two or three people, and then you've lost minutes. Or someone on the other team can just make a really nice play. Say they have an Ana, she hits a sleep dart, or the Zen just trances before, and you get no value out of your EMP. Then what have you been doing the last couple of minutes? So personally, I think a little less Sombra is good. Obviously, we won't see her next week as she is banned, but it's going to be very curious to see if we go to a composition that's very much like we had before, with Reinhardt being back and Mei still being there and Diva still being there and Ana still being there. The only person out will be Lucio, so we'll see how much of an impact that has. Maybe teams will just throw in a Mercy. I think it's more likely that they'd probably just throw in a Brig in the Lucio spot. But that obviously you have no more speed boosts for disengages, so that could still shift some things up. We will see what happens, but probably not seeing dive with no Winston. Some people are like, "Oh, Wrecking Ball and Diva." I don't see that happening. Wrecking Ball just gets shut down by Mei so easily, but yeah, some of these teams just they didn't have good game plans. They didn't know how to adjust, and that's partially on the players too. You have to be able to make good in-game adjustments. Toronto just couldn't do that. Florida had a much stronger composition, and it resulted in them winning that one. The other big loser, I say, is Boston. Yes, Boston's not a very good team. Yes, they weren't really expected to beat Washington or Atlanta, but oh my God, what that coaching staff. I mean, really? It's either the coaching staff or the players are just go in game and they're like, we're gonna do whatever we want. Either way, it looks horrible for the staff. I mean, Sigma, that Atlanta match was so brutal. Hawk on the Diva was just doing everything. He was just walking over their entire team, doing whatever the hell he wanted at all times, and they're out here with an Orisa Sigma, just doing absolutely nothing. Um, it was brutal. It was really bad to watch. They clearly have no read on the meta. No one on their coaching staff is good at predicting comps that are good. We saw it in week one where they came out with totally outdated garbage compositions. It's like, hello, get with the program, what, guys. So it's a really bad look for Boston. They're looking real good as my number 20 in the league. Yeah, man, It's like, guys, come on. How the mighty have fallen from like season one. But yeah, a very, very bad look for them. Once again, Toronto at 1-4. If this goes on for a couple more weeks for Toronto, your upper management's got to look at the coaching staff and wonder if it's time to make changes because this is too good of a team to be 1-4. It's frankly just unacceptable. They are the biggest disappointment in the league right now, for sure. Um, and we'll see if they can bounce back with Reinhardt coming back into meta. Um, Couple of big winners. See, I have one in the middle. Paris. Paris is a very interesting case this because this week they came out with an awful game plan against Houston. Their compositions were terrible. It didn't look like they were coordinated. It was all revolving around Nico on the Sombra, and he didn't perform very well. Ben Best was dying early all the time. It looked rough. Houston manhandled them. Like it was not close. It was a 3-0 and it was not a close 3-0 if those are a thing. It was one-sided. And then the next day they're going up against 5-0 Philly. Oh, guess what? They take out Nico. They put in XE to play with Soon, and then they take out Ben Best and put in No Smite on the main tank, and they looked so good. So I don't know. Maybe it was like we'll run out more of like this B team, I guess, and we can just beat Houston because they're Houston. They're 1-5. And then we'll bring out the real squad against Philly. Or their original game plan was what they had against Houston. They saw that it failed miserably and said, "Okay, we got to switch this up." But like I said, it was a horrible start for the coaching staff, but I give them a ton of credit for the adjustments that they made. To be able to come out the next day and beat Philly, throw in No Smite, who has had like no time the entire season, and they look really, really good. XE, go and watch Map 5. Map 5, Round 3. Final round on Oasis. They're on Gardens. And XE just popped off. Soon was really, really good the entire series as well. Like I said, No Smite played really well. Everwood performed well for them, but that last super crazy, minutes long, chaotic fight, XE just came so clutch. He was lasering everybody on the soldier, staying alive, getting kills, demecking divas. He had a just absolutely beautiful array of tracking to delete Funny Aster off the map, and which honestly may have single-handedly come through and won the game for them because FD God for Paris was able to drop a beat, and Funny Astro was still in the 60s. So maybe if he doesn't get deleted there, he can farm his alt, and maybe the match turns out differently. But yeah, XC's a nut, definitely a front runner for Rookie of the Year, and yeah, Paris is Toronto is the biggest disappointment. Paris so far is the biggest pleasant surprise. So they had a weird week, and of course obviously it has to be a good week for Florida. They won their only match. It's a great week for Houston. They get win number 2 in a row. Same thing for Atlanta. You come in and sweep your only match. Always a good feeling. So overall, let me know in the comments if you disagree with this. But another big takeaway as a whole, hero pools so far so good. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing the meta shift like that. We got to see a lot of different play styles. Like a lot of times we just saw the dive and then the combination of like the Soldier Tracer, Tracer Sombra, whatever it ended up being. So, and then there were some teams who were the teams that have no culture, that play the Orisa and the Mei and Hanzo and all of that. But hey, you got to do what you got to do to win. But just saying, the matches that I enjoyed watching way more were the ones that it was all Winston Diva. Got to see a ton of Tracer play. But yeah, I think it's really good for the league. I like how they do the drawing live after the matches. That was fun to watch. And now we know what we're looking at for next week. So could be very interesting. Like I said, we could be back to the Diva Rhine, May Hanzo / May Reaper / May McCree, and then with the Ana, but then of course they would have to fill in something for the Lucio. But I don't see I don't see Arisa getting played much with Ryan coming back. I don't see Wrecking Ball getting played very much at all, just as a stall hero. So could be back to about what we were before. But the good news is, if that does happen, there's a very good chance that May is going to get taken out next week. She can't keep avoiding herself. I mean, there's a last couple weeks. There's a 50% chance that she's gone. Um, so hopefully they get rid of her in a in a week, and we get to see some. That will definitely change it up. That will 100% completely change the scope of the meta. Um, the only thing that would be constant if that happens is we'll probably still see Diva because she's that good right now. She's just absolutely a monster, and the teams that didn't play her this week is just like, hello. Like, fine if you're gonna play Arisa over Winston, that's fine, but play the Diva. She's too good not to. So overall, it was a good week of matches. Like I said, it was interesting not watching any of them live, and going through the VODs this time. Um, I did see some of the results, but a lot of entertaining matches. Honestly, even the ones that were like the Houston 3-0 was still entertaining, even though it wasn't close because it was such a big upset. Um, like I said, we had pretty much essentially three big upsets here. So, um, once again, I'm going to touch on something that I talked about a little bit last week. Um, and for that, we're going to go to the standings. The big boys still aren't here yet. I was thinking about it the other day, and the only three teams that were in most people's like top 10 of power rankings, the only three teams that are like legitimately like super good, could contend this season that are actually playing a high volume of matches: New York, Philly, and Atlanta. Like I said, we've got Paris coming on strong, but a lot of people didn't expect them to be top tier. And they still have their issues. I mean, they did lose to Houston, so they're not perfect. But I mean, all the big boys that have barely been playing, we still have, remember, the top two teams in the league, and then not to forget about Hangzhou, Guangzhou. They both made the playoffs last year. Chengdu made the play-ins. Shanghai made the play-ins. Seoul made the playoffs. Almost beat Vancouver. So, and then Gladiators, another team that's supposed to be top tier, played one match. So, the big boys are coming in. I think it's really bad news for the teams that have gotten off to bad starts because these are the type of matches you have to be winning when you're playing against. If you're a Justice, you have to be beating the Mayhem and the Outlaws and the Defiant and the Uprising. You've got to be beating these teams now because your matches are only going to get harder. So, even though Houston's won two in a row, I think they're still in a heap of trouble. Same thing with Toronto. The 1-4 start is absolutely disastrous. Washington at 2-4, they're in a bit of trouble as well. So we will see. We will see if those teams can start turning around before they start getting their tougher matches. But like I said, next week, looking forward to seeing a lot of teams in action. The most interesting thing for me is probably getting to see London twice. They are a surprising 3-2, but they're playing against two of the best teams that are currently playing in Philly and Atlanta. So this could be a very telling week to see if they are for real or if they are pretenders right now. So, taking place at the Watsco Center at University of Miami. So hopefully it's a nice venue. Hopefully we don't have many technical issues. Let me know what you guys thought of week 5. Like I said, I thought it was a good week. Thought it was entertaining. One of our better weeks so far. Excited to see what happens with the hero bands and the hero pool moving forward. And as always, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have yourselves a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next one.